Good afternoon and welcome to the Committee of Adjustment hearings for Suburban Panel Number 2. We are a City of Ottawa quasi-judicial tribunal that holds public hearings to consider Planning Act applications, including minor variances to the zoning requirements and consent to sever land. Our hearings are now in person at Ben Franklin Place, 101 Centerpoint Drive. We also remote participation by video conferencing for our registered speakers. We are live streaming on YouTube, and the video will be archived and available for public viewing at a later date. My name is Fabian Poulam. I'll be chairing today's hearings, and you can address me by my name or as chair. And with me are my fellow panel members, Jay Baltz, George Barrett, Heather McLean, and Julianne Wright. The procedure for the hearings will be as follows. Listed on the agenda and appearing on the screen from time to time are the applications we'll hear today. For the sake of efficiency, I may deal with agenda items in a different order. Sorry. Okay. Panel members have reviewed the planning reports and any written submissions in support or opposition to each of the applications. Today, we hear any oral submissions relating to the applications. As part of the statutory public notification requirements, each applicant was required to post a sign on the property in question before the hearing. They also had to confirm in writing that they did so, or they'll need to swear or affirm an oath today that they fulfilled the sign posting requirements. Otherwise, we may have to adjourn or postpone the hearing. Madam Courtier, have we received all statutory declarations concerning sign posting?
Yes, we did receive all the declarations.
Thank you very much. The panel may then ask for a brief presentation of an application followed by questions for the applicant and city planning staff. We'll then hear from members of the public who have registered to speak, and we may also have questions for them. Finally, the applicant, who has the burden of proof, will have an opportunity to make final comments and reply. Please address your comments to me as the chair, starting with your name and spelling it if necessary, and your municipal address for the record. All presentations are limited to 5 minutes. Any exceptions will be at my discretion. At the end of the hearing, the panel may either make an oral decision or we may reserve our decision, which means that the decision won't be delivered today. In either case, and within 10 days, the Committee of Adjustment will send the official written decision and reasons for it to all parties and participants and anyone else who has requested a copy. Does anyone have any questions about the procedure we'll be following today? No questions? We have several applications to hear today, but first we'll deal with some procedural preliminary matters today. First of all, we have 2 minutes of previous hearings to adopt. Firstly, we have the February 6, 2024 minutes. I'd like to ask the panel for approval of these minutes. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Also for February 20th, 2024, all those in favor of these minutes, please raise your hands. I now have to ask the panel if they have any declarations of interest on this panel, any applications in this panel or any of the other 2 panels. Any declarations of interest? No declarations of interest. So we now have 3 applications today that are requesting an adjournment. We'd like to hear those first and the reasons for their request. First of all, having to do with item number 1, it's 2335 Baseline Road. The agent is Mr. Tardioli, and I believe he's here. I was under the impression he wasn't coming. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Hi, it's Jacob Bolduc, planner with Foten Consultants.
Okay.
We've been retained to prepare the planning rationale and just to speak to it. So briefly, the application is to increase the number of rooming units from 7 to 11. We were contacted by the owner yesterday, and they had been working with the architect on a few strategic changes. They would now like to increase that number to 12. My understanding is that that would require an adjournment sine die for a recirculation. We're comfortable with that. We'd rather do it now than have to come back again for another variance to seek the increase to 12. So
Okay.
That's the request.
Thank you very much. Does the planning department have any objections to this application being adjourned to sine die? The planner on this is Shahira Jalal. Are you available? They may not be available because they weren't expecting you to be here. So I'd like to ask the panel if they'd like to approve this application to be adjourned until, adjourned, sine die. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is adjourned, sine die. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you.
Next item for an adjournment request has to do with 55 Uxbridge. I understand this is a member of the public requesting this application to be adjourned. The person's name is Ron Muse. Are you available, Mr. Muse? Oh, there you are. Sure. Yeah. Good afternoon, Mr. Muse. Could you please
Good afternoon.
state your name and your address, please?
Ron Muse, 53 Uxbridge Crescent, Canada.
Thank you. Can you let us know the reason for your request to have it adjourned?
I did not receive the notification within the 10 days according to the guidelines. I was 2 days short on being able to have the 10 days to acquire a lawyer.
Okay. Can we confirm that we've delivered that notice to all those within the 60 meters in accordance with the requirements?
Mr. Chair, I can confirm that the mail out, including this notice, was sent out on March 5th, which is 14 days before this hearing. So it satisfies the 10-day requirement.
Thank you. Do you have another, is that the reason for your objection to hearing this application
Yes.
today?
I haven't had time to acquire a consultant or anything.
Okay, all right. Now, I'd like to ask the applicant, have you got any concerns about adjourning it for until the next meeting? 2 weeks.
How long?
First week of, it's the first week of April,
The date is April 2nd.
April 2nd.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, that good for you, Mr. Muse?
Absolutely fine. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks for your cooperation. It's much appreciated. Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the panel to adjourn this application till April the 2nd. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now the third item requested to be adjourned has to do with 1359 Gossett. And I believe this is requested by the planning department. So I haven't given. Okay, and this, Ms. Kachin, can you please tell us why you're looking for this adjournment?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, Chair. So we're looking for an adjournment of this application because we would like to wait until the future severance applications are submitted for 1356 Lewis Lane. Now, understanding that the current application before the committee is for a lot line adjustment at Gossett, it does alter the lot shape of Lewis Lane. And we are concerned from a planning perspective about the creation of a regular shape. However, I was able to speak with the owner of Lewis Lane property on Friday, and he had implied his intention to sever the lot fronting Parisienne. Now, staff we're okay with that, understanding that future plan. However, we are uncomfortable with moving ahead with the lot line adjustment on its own because there's no guarantee in terms of this severance happening in the future. We had originally submitted a report expressing no concerns with the condition that the future severance application be submitted. However, we were then notified by committee staff that we don't have the authority to require that the owners of Gossett property have their neighbor at Lewis Lane submit an application. And since the lot line adjustment directly affects the shape of Lewis Lane, we think it would be much more appropriate to be able to review those applications together as a whole. And we, as I stated in my staff report, we believe it's a reasonable request, given some of the groundwork has already been laid out. And as well as my conversations with Mr. Pereira, the owner of the Lewis Lane property. He didn't give me an exact timeline of when he would be looking to submit, but it did seem like it was a reasonable thing in the future. And it would be planning's preference to have all the law line adjustment and the severance be heard at once and reviewed.
Okay. Do the panel members have any questions? Ms. McLean?
No.
Okay, Mr. Baltz?
No, no, not if it's going to be adjourned.
Okay.
So we'll find out.
Okay. Ms. Wright? No. Mr. Barrett? No. Okay, so no questions from the panel. Now I'd like to ask the applicant if he's got any questions with respect to this adjournment request.
Yes, good afternoon. And do I need to press or no? It's already on. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. Don Simmons appearing for the applicants, Todd Levine and Gina Kim. They are the owners of 1359 Gossett, the property that is proposed to be severed, the lot line adjustment be completed. To be clear, Mr. Pereira, who would be acquiring this piece of land, is not my client. Nor does he have legal counsel to my knowledge. So I appreciated that my friend at the city has reached out to him and confirmed what his intention is. I think the main objection that I'm hearing from my friend and the reason they want these potentially two applications being heard together is what has been quoted in their report is the lot fabric. And as I understand that to mean the lines or division lines between the various properties. And I would submit that the lot fabric is not consistent in this area of all of these lots. In fact, it's quite inconsistent. I don't know if we can put up on the screen.
Mr. Simmons, I'd really like to say just specifically to the request for adjournment. Not get into the substance or of the application.
Well, the request for the adjournment is being made so that another application can be heard concurrently with this one. I think that's
Right.
hopefully the panel understands that. And what I'm saying is, I think the basis for that request is this lot fabric argument, which I'd like to show you that the lot fabric is inconsistent in that area to begin with, and therefore this argument being made that both of these applications or a possible application by Mr. Pereira, the neighbor, have to be heard together. The grounds for that is not really there. And we're talking about an 84 square foot piece of property here that's being potentially being severed and conveyed to the neighboring property. The conditions that have been proposed by my friend at the city, there's only two remaining on the most recent report that was submitted. One of which I agreed to from the beginning. Number two, the first one I'm not agreeing to only because, again, this is getting into the merits, but I've given a plan that shows that that shouldn't be a concern. So that's why I'm trying to address the lot fabric, because that's the underlying reason for the request by the city to adjourn it and have them heard together. And I'm
Okay,
trying
go
to
ahead.
demonstrate that there
Go ahead.
isn't.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wonder if that one submission, it can be the draft R plan, I think even would show it. My client owns adjacent property to this one on Goss at 1353. And that's actually not the one I was hoping we could put the draft. Yeah, I do want to.
Sorry, maybe page 2 of my staff report, it shows the proposed lot shape as well as the surrounding properties on Geo
Yeah.
Ottawa, maybe best appropriate.
Yeah,
the bigger
that
one.
will work for sure. would be item number 6 in the online submission. While she's trying to bring that up, it's essentially my position is this: if the committee is concerned about the fabric of the lot lines in this particular area, then I would have no choice but to concede that we'll adjourn and have the two applications heard together. But remembering that my client is a person who currently owns this property, is entered into agreement of purchase sale to sell this property to the neighbor to the rear, Mr. Pereira. That application could go, it could be a very lengthy time, and that's why we're trying to avoid that. But we wouldn't want it refused. If the committee was so concerned about lot fabric on this particular area, then we would prefer that it would be adjourned and heard together.
Okay. So I'd like to ask the panel if they've got any questions for the applicant. Ms. McLean?
So are we hearing that you'd like to proceed with the application for a lot line adjustment? I guess it's your call.
Again, my friend has raised the concern of lot fabric, and here we finally got it up on the screen here. Don't have a pointer or anything, but it's a real mishmash of lot lines. The lot to the left, so you can see 1353 is to the left of that. My client owns that as well. That's the rear yard line for that corner lot. It's half the lot line distance of the neighboring lots to the right of 1359. You can see there's angled lot lines. My friend's real objection here is that the city seems to be okay with the L-shaped, the L-shaped lot, but they're not okay with the T-shaped lot. And again, my client has entered an agreement purchase and sale to sell that piece of property to the neighbor, Mr. Pereira. There's a closing date in May. He'd like to complete that. He'd like to complete it. He'd like to complete it sooner rather than later. If the committee is so concerned about the fabric and thinks that my friend has raised enough concern that these two applications, put a possible future application by Mr. Pereira to sever off a piece that fronts onto Parisienne, which is the road across the top, then my client would consent to that, and we would have the two applications heard later. But it's certainly not his preference, and particularly for the size of the piece of property that we're talking about here. I know that didn't answer your question directly, but
So a question, you said the owner owns the corner property as well?
my client owns 1353, the corner property. If you can see it on the screen there. Maybe you can see it on the screen in front of you as well. Is that okay? So to the left of 1359 is 1353 Gossett. My client owns that property. It fronts on Gossett. Its rear yard line or lot line is half the distance of 1359. Again, my point is there's a real mishmash of lot lines going on at the end of what is Gossett, Parisienne, and Lewis. The three properties there.
I'm just wondering if our circulation radius didn't seem to include that corner property as part of the ownership, so that seems to be the other question I had was I didn't see a survey plan of the applicant's property showing what the rear yard measurement was. Was that on file?
I submitted another one. That was the one that came up on the screen initially. It's from 2017, I want to say, and it was done by a different surveyor and showed the dwelling on. It was a building location survey.
And there were a couple of outbuildings, accessory structures?
There were, on that particular in 2017, there was one shed, metal shed. Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure I saw that.
We can put it up on the screen.
I'll just leave it at that, because that could require some conditions as well, but I'll just leave it at that. I think if the applicant wishes to proceed with the application. today, so be it. Yeah.
You're happy to proceed, Mr. Baltz?
I'm happy to proceed. I would. Yeah, I would point out that the application doesn't actually include any justification for the desirability of this lot that is proposed to be created, which is one of the things that we're supposed to be looking at here. So that would have to come out in whatever you're prepared to present today.
It was simply in our covering letter that it
Yeah, I
was
have
to
that right in front of
yeah.
me, but there's specific tests.
I've gone through, are we talking about the Planning Act subsection 24 tests?
Yeah, and so we can discuss that in a presentation if we go forward today as well.
Wow.
But
To be perfectly honest, I was looking to speak to my friend Samantha before we came in here. I found one other woman with a pink shirt on that didn't wish to discuss the application with me, and I never got an opportunity before it was called up. And I was hoping to have her expand on her concern about the fabric to see if we can reach some agreement before the committee gave a decision, but
You might want to consider an adjournment then, so you have the time to talk to her.
yeah, well, I did initially. We got to understand, we've gone from adjournment request by the city to no objection from the city, back to adjournment request from the city since last Friday at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
So I've kind of been in a bit of a ping pong match since then. So I would appreciate the time before we proceed to speak to my friend, and perhaps we can find some common ground and not put the committee.
so I think, Mr. Chair, from what I'm hearing, I would be in favor of an adjournment because there needs to be a discussion that hasn't taken place yet. I think we need more information upon which to base our decision than is going to be before us, or at least that we have been able to read. So my preference would be to have an adjournment and figure out what needs to be done.
Okay, that's right.
Mine as well.
Okay, Mr. Barrett?
Mine as well.
Okay, so the inclination seems to be from the panel is that they would like to have this adjourned. Are you in agreement?
I'm okay with an adjournment.
Okay.
I wasn't okay with an adjournment to be heard concurrently with another application, which was the report that I
think
received
we'll
from the
leave
city.
you and Ms. Gachin to talk it over between yourselves,
Yes.
okay, and
I'm-
then come to a solution.
I'm okay with that, and it's particularly if it's a short adjournment of a couple of weeks, then.
Yeah, the next, do we have room on the next
Um,
hearing date?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, I would prefer it not be adjourned to a specific date. I think that these, if I may take the opportunity to maybe respond to a few things,
Absolutely.
to that, the applicant said, I'm not, this isn't court, you don't need to call me your friend. Ms. Gachini it's quite all right, thank you. So I just want to respond in terms of just this argument, because I've called with the applicant last Thursday, and I explained staff's rationale for looking at it from the broader perspective of lot fabric. We don't want to make a bad situation worse, and this is exactly why we are looking for assurance with those concurrent applications. If I can tell from a staff perspective, like, it's no concerns on the condition that we have some certainty. Since we are not able to condition requiring it, that's why it matters to planning staff. I understand that the applicant is working in the interest of his clients. They want to sell the lot. It's been in process for a long time. But from a city perspective, we are looking to see, what are we creating here in terms of these lots? Are we doing the adjustment just because, is there pressure from going on outside forces? That's not what my position is to do. And as Member Baltz has pointed out, I think that the rationale is not clear without those concurrent applications. The rationale provided is additional amenity space, but there's quite a sizable interior side yard along Parisienne. And so that's why I think that these two applications are incredibly linked together. And it's just my desire that, when the panel, if it hears it again, that it be done at the same time, unless, I think that, I think what we're missing here though is Mr. Pereira, the owner, right? Like, what is his plans if that's what I kind of want to see if it comes back to, right? I'm not sure if the applicant has spoken to Ms. Persons, but anyway, I'll stop it there, but
So your recommendation is sine die then?
my recommendation is sine die, and yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so any comments from the panel? about sine die? You're in agreement with that?
I would prefer sine die.
Okay. Mr. Barrett, you right? Yeah, it seems like everybody like to go sine die. So I'd like to ask the panel then for their agreement to proceed with this application. Adjourn this application, sine die. All those in favor of that, please raise your hands. Applications has been adjourned, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right, so next on the agenda is to address those unopposed applications. We have one unopposed application today. And the criteria for unopposed applications is as follows. No objections or concerns from the public, from the parties, applicant, city, or the public. No amendments are required. No registered speakers. The sign posting declaration has been received. Applicant or the agent has confirmed that they agree with all requested conditions, and there are no questions from panelists. I can confirm that there are no questions from panelists, and all of the other criteria have been met as well. The one application that we're talking about is application number 7, having to do with 533 Rowanwood. So I'd like to ask the panel for approval of this application. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Application for 533 Rowanwood has been approved. Thank you. Now we'll move on to agenda items in order. We'll go on to item number 2. And this has to do with 400 Inlet. And 400 Inlet. I'm looking for the agent, who is Anthony Johnson or Dan Paquette. Are you available online, gentlemen? Mr. Anthony Johnson or Dan Paquette, are you available, gentlemen?
Hi, I just got joined up. It's Anthony Johnson. I'm the agent on the application.
And what's your address, Mr. Johnson?
I'm number 12, Rue du Centre, Gatineau, Quebec.
Okay. Can you give us a brief description of your application today, please?
It's a minor variance application to reduce the residential parking rate from 1.2 to 1.1.
Okay. Does the panel have any questions? Mr. Barrett?
No,
Ms. Wright?
I did not.
Ms. McLean? Mr. Baltz?
As usual, I do. So I found the planning, I understand what's being applied for. You want to reduce the parking rate to 1.1 from the required 1.2 because of increasing number of units, and that's fine. I would like to know, I was a little confused by the planning rationale, which refers in various places to a secondary plan, the Arlene's card, a secondary plan that states that no parking spaces are required other than visitor spaces, which is used to support reducing it to 1.1 because that's greater than 0. So that's fine. However, there's also reference to Tower 5 that is an area X that has a requirement for 0.5 spaces per unit. And I don't know, it wasn't made clear why that was raised and how that applies to Tower 4. And also reference to parking spaces from Tower 3 that have been reassigned to this tower, which is Tower 4. So that left me somewhat confused what exactly we're proposing here today. So if perhaps that could be clarified and the exact math could be clarified, I would appreciate it.
Mr. Paquette?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I apologize for being a little late. There was a lag by the time we were trying to get on. And so I was here, but it was just a little lag there. So I did prepare And I think if there's a question of that nature, I'd like to walk through my presentation. It might be helpful. I sent to staff some presentation plans, and if they could be put up on the screen, that would guide us through this. There was, I sent through Anthony, the applicant, we sent a PDF with 3 drawings. Yes, thank you. So this site is where the star is, and the oval blue is where the LRT station is. That's just to set the context. It's north of Highway 174 and it's east of Trim Road. So that's the property. And if we go to the next sketch, so it's a bit skewed there, but nonetheless, to the far right-hand side of that, that's the approved site plan. And Tower 4 is the building on the far right-hand side. So that, what Brazil was doing, that Tower 4, is approved for 242 units. In Brazil, through the CMHC Select program, this program was set up to create energy efficient, affordable, and accessible units. And so what Brazil would like to do is increase the number of units in that building from 242 to 261. And the number of parking spaces that have been approved for Tower 4 is 287. In order to meet that 1.2 per unit standard, there's a 26 parking shortfall. And the basic request today is to reduce the standard of 1.2 per unit to 1.1 to effectively deal with the parking shortfall. We are not changing any of the visitor parking. We're going to meet the standard of 0.2 per unit. The basic, if you go to the third sketch, one of the things that, and what this sketch is trying to do, I appreciate it's quite tiny, but it illustrates the walking path between Tower 4 and the future LRT station to be located at Trim and 174. The idea here is that we feel from a planning point of view, so many units will not have parking. They're going to be the smaller, more affordable units. Some cases, in these cases, the unit holders won't own a car. They'll have 2 ways to get around, and we feel is sorry. So sorry about that. They're going to have 2 ways to get around. One is, of course, transit. They'll be able to walk to an LRT station, which is a high level of transit service. And then, of course, Brazil is providing on the site some shared use cars, some virtue cars. So we believe there's a reasonable basis for this request. Any reference to towers 5 and 6 is really one point we were going to deal with the requests for those towers. In any event, it has nothing to do with Tower 4. We simplified the application to solely deal with Tower 4. And the request before you is exactly what staff has indicated, to shrink, if you wish, the standard from 1.2 per unit to 1.1 per unit for the Tower 4 in order to allow for the additional units to be built under the CMHC program. So that's the presentation. In there, maybe I answered your questions, or maybe I didn't, but I thought we should start with that.
Thank you very much.
May I follow up, Mr. Chair?
Absolutely.
Okay, so my understanding is that the reference to Area X is irrelevant. That was left over from what might have been a more extensive application, and that the spaces from Tower 3 that have been assigned to Tower 4 are already counted in these 287? Is that?
Well, actually, no. So what happened there, the history there is that when we did Tower 3, we had extra spaces. And we went through a severance process and they were assigned to Tower 4. And there's 18 of those spots in Tower 3 that benefit Tower 4. All of those 18 go towards visitor parking. And that's why we are neutral on the visitor parking requirement. And so that's the story there.
Oops, thank you.
Ms. McLean, any questions? No? Ms. Wright?
No.
Mr. Barrett? No, no questions. Okay. I'd now like to ask our planning department, Ms. Kachin, are you able to give some more insight into this application?
Sure. Mr. Chair, so yes, yeah, staff have no concerns with this application. I think that recognizing that, there's proximity to transit, although maybe you have to be a bit fit to make it out there a little bit further than you want. But I do think that it's reasonable, especially I noted since they are sharing, I think there's a number of parking spaces allocated for, I think it's like Tower 3. It's the building across from it that the parking garage is connected to. And I think that shows that the applicant has tried to address some of the insufficient parking within their building. Staff, and then the applicant has also been in conversation with the bio lead who approved the site plan originally, and which also did the revision following that, and have expressed no concerns with that. So I believe that the variance is appropriate and is good to move forward.
Thank you very much. Mr. Baltz, any questions?
No, I'll just note that I appreciate the reference to virtue car and that goes some way to alleviating the reduction in parking spaces.
Thank you. Ms. McLean? Ms. Wright? Mr. Barrett? No questions? No, I'd like to ask for Mr. Bassett Curry, member of the public, who would like to say some words, make a presentation. Mr. Curry? Are you available? Mr. Curry, are you online?
He is online, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Can the coordinator give him some direction on how to get to us?
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Curry.
Yeah, I'm just concerned about the traffic for this narrow area and the like the number of cars that's gonna be going through all of this. It's like isolated entrance and only like increasing the cars that will give all the neighbors, and especially like it sounds like it's gonna go through from Tower 4 to Tower 3 through Tower 2 in one door, one garage door.
So before we get to that, can you please just state your name and your address for the record, please?
I'm the owner of, my name is Basil Khoury. I'm the owner of Unit 706 in 200 Inlet Private.
Okay, thank you. So who are you addressing that comment to, sir? That question?
I don't know, the committee, who approved like the lady just said, it was approved earlier, like from the engineering point of view.
So this is a minor variance application, sir. So what you have to address is the 4 tests so that they can answer the questions with respect to those. So are you aware of the 4 tests that are required to be met?
No.
Okay, well, I'll read them out to you. Maybe you've got some direct questions with respect to them. 1, is it desirable for the appropriate development or use of the land? That is the minor variance, building or structure. Does it maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan? Does it maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? And is it minor? So those are the 4 tests that have to be met. Those are arguments you need to make that they don't meet these tests So if you could please address your questions or comments using those four tests as your concern. Mr. Curry?
Yeah, I'm not really familiar with this. I think it's like for the zoning area. So anyways, if it's not valid question or concern, it's okay.
So I think that the planning department has addressed these things. They don't have any concerns with respect to the zoning bylaw, the official plan. They believe it's minor and it's desirable for the good development of this property. Am I correct, Ms. Gachin?
Yes.
Thank you. Does the panel have any questions for the public? Mr. Bolts?
So, yeah, my understanding is just the concern is about the increased traffic from the development. And although the intent of this minor variance is to reduce the number of parking spaces and therefore the number of cars. So I guess I would just ask Ms. Gachin to confirm that what we have before us today should actually reduce traffic. Is that correct?
That's correct. Because the number of people there is set. It's just the number of cars that's going to change. So really, yes, less people will be coming in and out of that facility.
So Mr. Corey, does that clarify what we're looking at today? What we are about to vote on, or will decide on, would have the effect of lessening the number of cars coming in and out. So does that address your concern?
I don't understand how the increasing the number of parking lots will reduce the number of the cars.
Because the number of parking spaces that's required, so the number of cars that would be there would be 313 under the zoning bylaw, under what's required. What is before us today is reducing from 313 spots for cars to 287 spots for cars. So there would actually be 26 fewer cars should this be approved. If it's not approved, they would have to either create fewer units or provide more parking spaces and therefore more cars somewhere else. So if we say yes to this, there should actually be fewer cars in this development than would normally be required.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Any other questions for Mr. Curry? Panel? No further questions. Okay, so I'd like to ask the panel if they would like to reserve on this application. All those in favor to reserve, please raise your hands. The application will be reserved, and that means that you'll get your decision within 10 days in writing. Mr. Paquette? Can't hear you.
Okay, yeah, I'm back on. I heard you. Yes, thank you very much. We'll wait for that.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Next item on our agenda has to do with application number 5 concerning 839 Shefford. Susanna, I think Keslerera, is that the way I say it? Oh, I wasn't sure I was getting that right. Okay,
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
good afternoon. Could you please give us a brief description of your application this afternoon?
Our application is for a consent to create a new lot that will comply with all the zoning requirements and to establish an access easement for a shared access between the retained and the severed lot.
Thank you.
And my client, the Greenbelt Church, asked me to discuss at the first condition with the committee, just to make sure it's necessary and it's the most cost efficient and time efficient approach. Because as a non-for-profit organization. They want to be confident about their decision, and they want to make sure they're agreeing to the right thing.
Okay,
We discussed the condition with the city staff. We had a discussion with the engineering department, and they were able to reward it in a more lenient way. However, it doesn't change anything on our end or the civil engineer's end, because in order to provide evidence that the new lot is serviceable independently, the civil engineer still needs to do the whole exercise. They'll have to prepare a grading plan, servicing plan. In order to do that, we'll have to obtain a new topographical survey plan, and an architect has to design a building. And it seems like quite a excessive amount of work for something that will be addressed in the future, or will have to be redesigned or addressed, as any development in the future will be a subject to site plan control, or at least a building permit application. So we wanted to see if the committee agrees with the city staff, or if the committee would consider removing the condition.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to now ask the panel for any questions they have for the applicant. Mr. Barrett? No? Mr. Baltz?
I'll wait till after we hear from planning staff.
Okay. Ms. McLean? Okay, that's right. You'll wait too, okay. So the only, you agree with all the other conditions though, other than just number one, having to do with independent servicing?
Correct, we do agree, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And now I'd like to ask planner Jerica Gilbert to give her side of the story for this application.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Chair. Yes, no, well, we are sympathetic to this organization being nonprofit. I have worked with my engineer to really kind of strip down this condition to the bare bones, and it's to the point where it's basically all we are asking from the applicant is some form of letter or some form of statement from their side that's saying that these two lots can be independently serviced. Speaking with my engineer, he does not believe that everything that the applicant's engineers are requesting are necessary. Unfortunately, I'm a planner, I'm not an engineer, so I can't speak to those conditions entirely. I mean, it is part of kind of the tests that we look at when we are doing new lot creation, is whether or not those lots can stand on their own. And while I am sympathetic to the cost for this organization, we are creating a new lot that will be severed off and sold. So there is still going to be a gain to the applicant. And I'm happy to answer any further questions in that regard, but we've done our best. I'm sure the committee is familiar what our standard condition is for lot grading and drainage and servicing plan. This is really stripped back. But I would not feel comfortable recommending removal of this condition at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to ask panel if they have any questions for planner Jerica Gilbert. Is right?
No.
Mr. Baltz?
So would then to planner Gilbert, the just trying to figure out how I want to put this. So we've heard from the applicant that this would require a large design exercise, and I believe mentioned having to design a building in order to figure out if it needed to be serviced, but I haven't seen that sort of thing before. When a lot is severed off, there simply needs to be some confirmation that it can be serviced for at least some reasonable use. Is that what the engineers are telling you is true? And what you I think said you had a list or an indication from the engineering department what they thought would be required. So what can you give us an indication of that?
Yes, through you, Chair. Yes, there seems to be a disagreement between the engineers on how they would go about getting this proof. Our engineering team seems to think that it could be mostly a desktop exercise with no real designing of this building, because this is an industrial lot that will ostensibly at some point go through site plan control. It would just be more about saying that the lots are capable, like a statement that the lots are capable of independent servicing. Whether it's the applicant's team believes that it will be like a $15,000 or $20,000 exercise in order to get the information they need. It might be worthwhile for the applicant to consider the opinion of a different engineering firm. And definitely on our end of things, we can have, I don't know if there was time before this meeting for the engineers to speak to one another and kind of come to an understanding on how they might be able to fulfill this. That can definitely happen after the fact. And I definitely feel that in this case, this conversation can continue to evolve with this condition, just since the basically the department clearing it would be Pride and Building Code Services. So yeah, I'm not sure if that fully answers the question. I can't speak to the technical, like I can't give you like the technical specifications of what exactly the engineers would be looking at in that letter.
Okay, thank you. But the gist of this is that the city's engineering department doesn't think that as extensive an exercise is needed as the client's engineers are telling them they need to pay for. Is that pretty much it? Yeah, thank you.
Yes, yes.
Planner Gilbert, just to follow up on that, are you able to give us that stripped down version of the condition that you described at the front end? And maybe the applicant can review that and see that it's less onerous than what she's expecting.
Through you, Chair. So the applicant has seen both versions.
Okay.
I always send the applicants ahead of time. Once I have my draft report finished, I send them the conditions to kind of screen it. They did flag at this time that we had just the standard lot, like a full lot grading and servicing plan that we put on all of our new lot creation for our consent conditions. Myself and my engineer met with the applicant and we discussed it, and that was when the condition that you see today was put on this application. So this is they have seen both versions. They were hoping that we could remove it entirely, and after conversations with our internal city staff, we don't feel comfortable enough, just because that would be a liability on the city. Basically, it's up to the applicant to demonstrate that the lots are capable of servicing, not necessarily the other way around, if that makes sense.
Yep, does completely. So you've seen both.
Correct,
and-
yes, we
And you're
did.
still of the opinion that it's going to cost you a lot more than what you
We
expected?
did discuss all the versions with the civil engineer, and my understanding is that provide evidence, in other words, a letter that this lot is serviceable, is pretty much on top of the exercise. You know, they do grading plan, servicing plan, and then they can provide a letter. In order to put it in writing, my understanding is that the professional practice is to really make sure that it does work.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Wright, do you have any questions? Mr. Barrett? Okay. Are any members of the public wish to speak on this matter? Yes, sir. Who are you, sir?
Bonjour, my name is Yvan Fortin. I just saw a picture. Is that the right picture of 839 Shefford that you have on your screen? I don't think that's the right drawing. Can you put it up on the screen? That's not-
That is the report photo for 1359 Gossett, not 839 Shepherd.
Okay,
We have the correct ones in our report.
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
okay. And also, I just want to say something that I'm the real estate agent going through the transaction to try to sell that piece of land. And on Geo Warehouse, we have 2 roll numbers registered for, so apparently in 94, there was a survey done and there's an easement going for that piece of land.
Okay.
That was done in 94. So I just wanted to add that too.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so we've listened to the public and you have the last word, Ms. Keslerova, sorry. You have the last word.
Obviously, our goal is to sever the property, so ultimately we will agree to all the conditions, but we had to try and make sure it's really necessary, as it seems a little wasteful to do work for something that will not be used in the
It
future.
will be used eventually by somebody that buys the property. They have to be sure that they have services that can come to that property.
Correct, but the list of permitted uses is quite long and we can only take our best guess and design a building without knowing who the future owner will be and what the future development will be.
Maybe ask the agent who may know what the use of the building is going to be. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So I'd like to ask panel if they would like to reserve this application or reserve it. Would you like to reserve the application and we'll make a decision? All those in favor, raise your hands, please. Thanks. So we're going to reserve our decision. You will receive it in writing within 10 days.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next application we'll hear is item number 6, having to do with 2666 10th Line Road. And I'm looking for Vincent Denomé. Mr. Denomé, are you available?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
Good afternoon. So I remember you from the last time. And could you just give us a brief description of your application today?
Yep. So through you, Mr. Chair, on March 5th, we had this item adjourned to this meeting to confirm that the retained parcel will be merged with a neighboring property, so it has frontage on a public road. As it is now, the retained parcel would be landlocked, which the committee was not comfortable with. I can confirm that we've spoken with city staff and council, and the properties are able to be merged, and there's conditions in the staff report that speak to it. So I think both planning and my side are comfortable with moving forward with this.
Okay. I'd like to ask panel if they have any questions. Ms. McLean?
Just one question.
Yeah.
If we were to impose a condition about demolishing the structures that are on the severed land, would that be a problem for the applicant?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't believe so. I have a demolition permit in hand, and it's to be scheduled soon. I would rather not have a condition just because it's already planned to move forward, but I'll let planning decide that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Baltz, any questions? No? Mr. Barrett?
With regards to the demolition, are all the buildings on the retained land going to be removed?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, there is a detached garage and a single family home dwelling that will both be demolished. There was a construction trailer that's already been removed
Thank you.
That's right. I've got a question for the applicant. Now, have you already merged the two properties? Are they merged already?
No, not at this time. It'll be done within 30 days of this decision.
Okay. And, okay, that's good. Thank you very much. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak? No, no one from the public. I'd like to ask the panel then for, if they would like to reserve on this application. All those in favor of reserving, please raise your hands. Your application is reserved and you'll be notified of our decision within 10 days, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. I believe that concludes our business for today. Thank you, everybody, for your help, and look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks, couple or 3 weeks. Thank you.